Have you been watching my Pluto series? I hope so. Pluto is the power point in your chart, and it is so important that you understand your Pluto placement and that you understand it deeply. Why? Because it's going to show you the part of yourself that is karmically imperative that you transform and that you change. I do see it as the psychological wound that sort of runs your life underneath the surface, and in understanding it, you have more of a chance to heal it. So in this video, I'm going to take you through Pluto, through the houses 5 through 8. But don't just watch this video only if you have your Pluto in the 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th house. I want you to watch this video even if you have your Pluto placement in a different house. Why? Because I want you to understand the people in your life who have this placement. Because once you understand their psychological wound and how they are sort of stuck in their self-sabotaging way, if you will get them. You will completely get them at a whole new level. This is how we create sympathy and empathy towards other people, by understanding their Pluto placement. It's like I am going to give you the piercing ability to see the depths of their soul and how they have been wounded and how they continue to wound themselves if they have not yet transformed. So I want you to gather the charts of the people that you know, go look up their Pluto placement, and then watch. I also want to tell you that you will like this video if you've got other planets in these houses. I talk about the darker side of each one of these houses. So let's say you don't have Pluto in the 5th house, but you have your sun there. You will see the shadow side of the 5th house when I talk to you about Pluto, because when we talk about Pluto, we have to talk about it in a little bit of a darker way. We have to see the dark side. So think about your planetary placements between the 5th house and the 8th house. Now, why can't I do all 12 houses in a video? Well, you will see that this is an extremely long video, and I'm not doing superficial work here. I'm not just talking to you about the lighthearted part of Pluto and how to transform it. We are going in so deep, and we are piercing the superficial side. We are penetrating just the crust. We're going into the gore, the grit. We're going into the raw, dark side of Pluto. And then I'll help you by telling you what you need to do to heal and to transform those karmic wounds. Okay, are you ready? Let's dive in. The 5th house. If you have a 5th house Pluto, I want to ask you the big question of who in your life shut you down. Who told you you couldn't do it? That's my question. This is the house of self-expression. This is the house of self-actualization. And this is the house of creation or creativity. This is a massively creative placement. So in this house, this Pluto placement will focus on your creative talents and the way in which you express yourself and your self-actualization, which basically means who do you want to be in this lifetime, right? And how do you want to express it? Your talents are cultivated inside of you, and then they're put out there into the world, and hopefully, fingers crossed, they're appreciated. This house loves happiness. It has a childlike joy about it. And it also, this house, the 5th house, also represents children. So this is a big Pluto placement. And so it's going to take some time and some thought to get you to really deeply understand it. And it's complex because this Pluto placement can actually go 2 different ways. It can either get too big or it can be too small. It's really important that you go look at what Saturn and Jupiter are doing to this house and this Pluto placement. So do you have Jupiter or Saturn or both in aspect to this placement? I want to know if you have Saturn or Jupiter in harsh aspect. That means in opposition or in square to your Pluto. For my advanced students and listeners out there in the world, I want to ask you about the ruler of this house. So I want you to go and find the ruler of this house. Let's say you have Pluto in Leo. Well, the ruler of Leo is the sun. Now I want to ask you if the ruler of this house is in happy aspect to Pluto. Now, if you have Scorpio and Pluto, which I know a lot of you do, the ruler of Scorpio is Pluto, right? But there's a secondary ruler. It's the original ruler to Scorpio, and that's Mars. So I want you to go look at Mars. If you have Pluto and Virgo in the 5th house, I want you to go look at Mercury. Okay. And if you have Pluto in Sagittarius, then I want you to look at Jupiter. And if you have Pluto in Capricorn, then I want you to look at Saturn. So I want you to look at Saturn and Jupiter. And if you have negative aspects to Pluto, Saturn and Jupiter in negative aspect to Pluto, Saturn is going to make it go too small. Jupiter is going to make it go too big. I want to know also secondarily the ruler of the sign in which Pluto is in. I just told them to you. If that is also in negative or challenge aspect, opposition or square to Pluto, it takes on a more negative characteristic. It is a harder challenge to overcome. This placement is really important to go look at the rulers and Jupiter and Saturn. If you have challenging aspects to the ruler or to Saturn, to Pluto, it's probably going to make your Pluto energy repress itself and minimize itself. It's going to make this aspect create deep insecurity inside of you. Now, with Jupiter, it can be any aspect. It can be a conjunction, it can be a trine, it can be a sextile, it can be an opposition, it can be a square. It doesn't matter. It's probably going to overinflate this Pluto operating the 5th house. Your 5th house will probably operate in an overinflated way, and it could even fill you up with not insecurity, but arrogance or too much confidence. So with Pluto here, we're working with a soul trauma that has come from a deflation of one's sense of self or ego, or an overinflation of ego. That's why we have to take our time to explain these houses with this Pluto placement, because they can go in completely opposite ways. If the soul has those Saturn aspects, it most likely feels a loss of the creative self. They can either feel this at birth, carrying in this baggage, if you will, from previous lifetimes, or they got this feeling in their early childhood. And the feeling is that they didn't get recognized in some way that they wished they had. They didn't get their slice of the pie, if you will. They didn't get to stand in the limelight that they sought or desired. So for some reason, they learned or they felt like their light didn't shine or couldn't shine, or someone wouldn't allow it to shine. And this can sadly make them feel so powerless, thwarted, and bummed out that they gave up on themselves, on their own selves in some way, shape, or form. They became so insecure. Is this you? If this is you, you became so insecure that you are not good enough. And at your worst, you can actually feel obsessed to get the attention that you were longing for and that you were starved from. And so they can feel an enormous pressure from within themselves to do something to get the recognition that they so badly crave. And this is not a game for these people. This is survival. If they even sink lower, they will do anything to get this attention. And I mean anything. All Pluto in the 5th house people have a desire to advance, to be creative yet again, and because they were very creative in a past life probably, and to almost build a new identity, to self-actualize and self-express through the creative process, which is actually what they will probably come to learn is what they do best in life, is to get creative. And it doesn't mean they're an artist or a dancer or a singer or musician, as much as they want to create life that represents their true self-expression and how they see the world. If the soul has Jupiter aspects to Pluto, it can result in this overinflated ego, like I mentioned. And when it's severely disabled or undeveloped, it stays in sort of this immature 2-year-old reality, really believing that the world completely revolves around them. And they turn into a me type of person, right? And these Jupiter-Pluto people are remembering a past life, or they're coming into this lifetime remembering that they were truly worshipped. They were kingly or queenly, and they come in with this huge sense of entitlement. They either come in with deep insecurity or over inflated egos, or they're on the pathway to becoming truly self-actualized. So I want you to tell me, where do you fall on this continuum, and can you relate? If the ruler has a healthy or positive aspect to Pluto, you really do have a fantastic chance of sort of living between both of these worlds until you get it really right. Tell me if you see yourself in this kind of dilemma, with this kind of karmic challenge, with this wound playing out, either big or small. And maybe you have both Jupiter and Saturn and the ruler all in positive relationship to Pluto. That's pretty cool. How does your Pluto in the 5th house express itself? So I want to stress that this is the house of the joyful child, or joyful childlike qualities that live inside of the adult in you. And it's the creative childlike expression that makes you uniquely you. And with this Pluto placement, somehow you're really unique. The fact that you know that you are special or unique, and you probably do have an awareness around that, especially when you were young and childlike and innocent, if you will. What happened is somebody who you probably admired shot you down. And your uniqueness, your creative expression, your self-expression was not received in the way you intended it to be or wanted it to be. And you might have even felt punished or not invested in around your self-expression or your creative pursuits. Somebody knocked it out of you. Somebody told you, no, don't do that. Maybe your imagination was too Plutonian, too dark, too foreboding, inappropriate, if you will, for those that were around you. Somehow in your big self-expression, in your desire to share yourself, inside your childlike innocent joy, you got squashed. And this beautiful, creative, open-hearted inner child that lives deep within you got really, really hurt. And at worst, it metaphorically died. Pluto. With a Pluto-Saturn aspect in challenge, so Pluto square Saturn or Pluto opposing Saturn aspect, you probably closed off and decided not to express your creative self or your uniqueness. And maybe you even stopped creating anything. And maybe you even stopped loving your own self. There's a lot of love in this house. And so that Saturn-Pluto aspect limits that self-love, limits that expression, represses it, oppresses it, puts it down. There is also, I want to tell you, a very, very deep desire to matter with this placement, to be something special in the world. And many of these people feel that they have a great purpose and a great mission in life that was either stolen from them or will be stolen from them. Pluto here will also give you the karmic lesson that personal joy is not what will truly fulfill you at the deepest level. If you evolve, you will come to learn that your talents are actually meant to be shared with the collective. When your creative pursuits benefit others, the world, or humanity, that is when you truly evolve. It's similar to the lessons around Christmas. Like when you're a kid, you cannot wait to go to sleep Christmas Eve and see what you got underneath the tree from Santa in the morning, right? And when you evolve, you absolutely cannot wait to go to sleep and to wake up and see the pleasure in what you gave, to see that pleasure in what you gave to others, created in them. That's the magic of Christmas, right? And in order to heal, you really have to shift your purpose from me into how do I benefit you? So you have to move from the 5th house to the 11th house. Now, I'm an evolutionary astrologer. I've been doing this for 23 years. I do readings all day long. I have a big practice. You can book a reading with me if you like, or anybody on my team. Find us at soulnavigation.com. Just check the notes section below. As an evolutionary astrologer, we look at the opposite house to find the healing remedy. So you have to move out of the 5th house, which is me and my self-expression and my uniqueness. And the 11th house is others. It is groups and organizations. It's humanity. So I want to take this a little further, okay? I call this one of the houses of joy. I also see the 9th house as a house of joy. This is your pleasure house. This house will show you how you get pleasure, how you seek out pleasure. And this can be a romance house, a sexual romance also, and anything else that makes you feel good. So with Pluto here, it can either repress the pleasure or seek out too much of it. In a way, this house, if you seek out too much pleasure, it's probably going to circle back around and come back to hurt you. So perhaps you overindulge in things that will hurt you: pills, alcohol, drugs, sex, right? Perhaps you take on all the wrong lovers and have a string of lovers, and you are a Casanova, a Don Juan, or just a player. All of that sexual intimate activity just leaves you ending up feeling vacant and actually even more alone than just being alone. And perhaps you get addicted to the things that bring you joy, only to ruin your deeper and your higher, more truthful happiness. Too many drinks, too many drugs, too much gambling, too many fast cars, yachts, money, food, prostitutes, wrong partners, parties, just the pure gluttony of happiness, just being a glutton for ecstasy, if you will. So whatever the thing you are chasing to bring you joy outside of yourself, you come to find out that it really doesn't work. So there can be this perpetual childlike dissatisfaction of always wanting something more or better or different, to fill you up, only to realize that that very thing you thought was going to fill you up with happiness and joy, that thing that you thought you wanted out there in the world, it isn't really out there in the world. It has to be born or created from within you. And that is your true self-actualization. By getting back to finding the courage to express your unique creative gifts with others in a way that serves the collective or humanity or mankind or another person, not by just putting a hollow crown on your head that says, admire me and my incredible life, see how good I am, see how great I am. That's the Jupiter aspect, by the way. Really sharing your gifts with others. And if you don't overdo chasing pleasure, you may do the exact opposite, which is the Saturnian way. Flat out give up pleasure altogether because you don't believe that you deserve it or you can have it or that you will ever get it. You may hold yourself back from even believing in joy. You might not even look for joy anymore because there's a part of you that thinks you'll probably never find it. You can have a pessimistic relationship with joy, with sex, with lovers, with love affairs, like you can stop believing in it. You can literally shut down all expression of yourself. In the very worst situation of Pluto in the 5th, you literally shut yourself down. And then you can project that onto others as if they should shut down their creative expression too. And so you get kind of out of jealousy, you get a little bit critical of others who have not shut themselves down like you have. And so there's a bossiness with this placement too. It's sort of like the misery loves company. If I'm going to sit at home all day and eat donuts and gain 300 pounds and you're going to be a skinny mini, I might be jealous of that. And I might tell you, how bad you are for just being so boring that all you do is eat salads. And I start putting you down for eating salads and being in great shape, right? Because I'm not. Can you relate to that? Do you have anybody who does that to you? Yeah, check and see if they have a Pluto in the 5th house. And then, of course, you may just have evolved and you have balanced this all out by being creatively expressive, benefiting others, self-actualized, not too cocky, thinking that you reign supreme, and not being too insecure about your place and your purpose in life. So let's keep going so you can truly understand this. What I usually see here is there is a big big, huge fear around not feeling special enough, not feeling chosen, not feeling picked, not feeling selected, or a fear that you won't be chosen, picked, or selected, that you're going to be overlooked. And just the biggest fear here with Pluto in the fifth is that you're just going to be flat out mediocre, a big fat 5, just a 5, just medium, just mid, right? And that you're not going to have the greatest love affair. You're not going to have the great destiny. You're not going to be special or unique. I read this quote somewhere about Pluto in the fifth, and I thought it was absolutely perfect. It was by Antonio Salieri, and he's in Amadeus, and he said, quote, "All I wanted was to sing to God. He gave me that longing, and then he made me mute." Why? That is Pluto in the fifth house. He gave me these talents. He gave me this obsession to sing, and then it was stolen from me. Yeah. The remedy for this karmic wound, this karmic placement, can be to not listen to those people who thwarted your creative dreams. Who told you that you were not good enough? Who told you that you did not do well enough? Who told you that you were not anything special? Who told you this when you were younger? Because you believed that person, and that shut you down. Now, on the other hand, if you have Jupiter aspects, somebody made you actually believe that you were the king or the queen, and then you went out into the real world, probably one of your parents adoring you, and you got kicked in the teeth, and you realized that you're not, right? That you're actually not the king, you're not the queen. And so your parents could have worshiped you or idealized you, or have you ever been involved with a partner whose mother like idolized or worshiped their child, and then you're involved with them and you have to deal with that attitude? You just want them to like get real. You're not all that. So it can go either way. I want to know if you can relate to this. I usually see this with more of the insecurity. I have experienced it in other people with the cockiness, and that was unbearable. Those people who are arrogant and cocky, they actually don't know they are. So I'll be very surprised if anybody on here actually says, yeah, I was the arrogant part. I had the arrogant part of this story. Because a lot of those people, they just think it's their right. They actually think they're measuring it accurately. I want to know if you got wounded by this and you shut yourself down. Who shut you down? Who told you you didn't make the cut? These are the big shutdowns that you got probably from long ago, and your subconscious still believes them. Now, if nobody did that to you, then it comes from a past life. That's the evolutionary astrology part that I believe in, that I teach. Instead, I want you to take up, have the courage, find the courage to take your creative pursuits back up again. Be willing to step into the creative process with passion and all that creative power. Be ecstatic. Lose yourself in the expression of your creativity, in the story that you tell, in the poetry that you write, in the way that you dress, in the fashion that you create, in the colors that you paint with, right? Even if you're a long haul trucker, you know, if you have this placement, there's something creative around the way that you talk or think or dream. And I don't want this passion to die inside of you. It's absolutely critical that you express it and you share it with the world. Transcend the earthbound, mundane life and step into the euphoria that is expressed when you are being uniquely you, by showing off your talents once again, like you once had. You know, realize that it's not true that you are powerless. It's also not true that you're the most powerful creature on the planet. Step into an awareness of divine spirit, that there are forces larger than you at play. You're co-creating with the universe. Get a broader vision. Go way beyond your own self. And then that is when the real magic can happen. That is when there is divine, euphoric, creative intervention. When I say share your creative gifts with others, I mean inspire others with you, with your energy. Uplift people out of their miseries with your gifts. You, my friend, are the gift. You are the gift. Share it with others. Don't shut it down. You'll find a healing in the ability to do the 11th house, which is Aquarius, by being able to detach from needing admiration and needing admirers and needing a fan club or needing those thumbs up or likes on social media, needing approval and attention from others at all costs, doing anything to get it, and stepping more into the Aquarian approach where you don't give two flying squirrels what other people think of you, and share your uniqueness in a way that benefits life and others. And if in return you get something more than joy and satisfaction out of that, you get admiration, well, then that's wonderful, and celebrate that. But don't shut down your true, unique self-expression. Okay, let's talk about Pluto in the 6th house. This placement is about a few things. This is about your mentors in life, your responsibilities in life, your own self-improvement, your skills, and your craft being utilized in the world. And one of the things that I recently learned, well, about 5 years ago, from my mentor, Stephen Forrest, is this is also, he believes, the house of aunt and uncles. And he goes deep into the concept of aunt and uncles in this house and how important aunt and uncles are. I am an aunt. I'm a good aunt. I'm a good aunt, let me tell you. And aunt and uncles are really special and unique because they are mentors, and they don't come in with this parental scrutiny, right? They're a little bit more open-minded and open to making mistakes in the world. So this is an interesting concept. So I do want you guys to think about your aunts and your uncles and your mentors. These people, these are souls. If this is you, this is a little bit of a harder placement, I think. These souls incarnated with a Pluto placement that made them feel that they were in a subordinate position in this lifetime. And they looked up to mentors and they learned about all that could go wrong from their mentor. So I want to know, who was your mentor? What went a little bit or a big bit wrong with how they taught you? You know, maybe this comes from a previous lifetime, or this is coming from your childhood, 0 to 12, sometimes up to 14, where someone was over you and they were pointing the finger at you and they were telling you to do better. An obsessive compulsive need for improvement inside of you began. Maybe you thought your parent or your mentor was the Almighty, or maybe your world was shattered by an illness, or maybe somewhere, somehow, you figured out what you needed to live up to in order to be successful or just survive your life. Somehow the stakes needed to be raised, and the task at improving yourself became daunting. Many of you would literally die trying, and others would actually cross the threshold of improvement. Where do you fit into this equation? Did you just die trying to be better? Or did you actually do the things that were required to make yourself better? By the way, this is the psychological karmic wound. So this is the wound of your perception. You know that this isn't actually the truth, right? Like these Pluto wounds are not really the truth. They are the story that you have been told, that you started to believe in. They are your psychological perceptions that became wounded, but it is not the truth of you. You don't necessarily need improvement. Please tell me that you know now that you are perfect just the way you are. You are learning as you go, and you actually have nothing to live up to. You are full of goodness. It's that part of your karmic story that was made up by those who had influence over you, probably because they were teaching you exactly what they themselves were taught. These souls, you, if you have this Pluto in the 6th house, usually develops an obsession for perfection out of the fear that they are not good enough. And this soul is highly in touch with crisis. Crisis in their own personal lives and crisis in the world. You are overly aware of the problems that exist in the world and within you and within your family and within others. And you develop a compulsion to improve and to fix and to reassess yourself constantly. And you can live in a chronic loop of self-reevaluation. And this is usually a very humble and a very sacrificial placement. And you can end up serving others in a massive way without any reciprocity. It sounds kind of easy, doesn't it? But it is very torturous, I will tell you. These people feel a great destiny to be of service to the world. And with the planet Pluto here, we have to look at this again in a little darker terms. This need to serve can, when it's dysfunctional or when it's exaggerated, can come from a deep insecurity of feeling unworthy. They live with a chronic fear that if they don't serve you, help you, assist you, that they will not matter to you. And they develop a compulsive need to be needed by you. This loop can trap them into sort of a twisted dependency story. My question is this: do these people serve and take care of your needs to make you need them and want them? Or do they serve you because it truly fulfills them to do so? Or is it a little bit of both? So if that's you, I want to know your truth about that. Would you share with us? By the way, so many people have shared so many Pluto stories, and I am so grateful. I have cried reading your comments. Please leave a comment. Everybody learns from your comments. I do try to answer all of them, most of them, but every time I turn around, I get 90 more comments. So I will be getting through them. I am trying my very hardest, and I just want to say thank you. And I'm so touched and I'm so moved. So will you, Pluto in the 6th house people, answer that question for me? This is going to be a soul that finds their power by being utilized in a meaningful way in the world. That's kind of the nuts and bolts. And they usually have an enormous integrity around their responsibilities, so much so that they will sacrifice their own needs to tend to the responsibilities that they agreed to. Listen to some of these examples. You can see the 6th house Pluto here. Queen Elizabeth, Sigmund Freud, Jeff Bezos, Jacques Chirac, the former president of France, Paul Newman, Ronald Reagan, and George Washington. So these Pluto souls, 6th house souls, also, they want to achieve something meaningful, but they want to master a craft. They're usually very disciplined and so self-sacrificing. They have learned what it means to surrender all too well. And I'm not talking about surrender, to God or faith, to surrender their own self or their own needs to serve yours. These people have so much stamina for service and work that they can easily become workaholics. This placement is my mom's placement, and she is still 76 years old, a workaholic. And sometimes they just work so hard just to prove to themselves and to the world that they are, in fact, important and meaningful to the world. My deep, personal, very personal question for you, please leave it in the comments, is how did your mentor in life, how did your teacher in life, and who was that, misguide you? How did they misguide you? Maybe it was unintentional. Maybe it was just that person being ignorant or not knowing any better. But in some way, the person teaching you or guiding you didn't do it perfectly well. They didn't do it in a healthy way. Maybe they didn't mean to be cruel. Maybe they did. And maybe they did this, like I said, unintentionally, but they misinformed you. They misguided you. They developed in you through this misguidance, right? So you trusted this mentor. Maybe you went along with what this mentor told you should do, and it wasn't right. Maybe it lacked morality. It lacked integrity. It hurt you. It wounded you, and it taught you to never again ask for help. Never. It taught you to never really need the opinions of other people and to do it all on your own, to figure it out on your own, to become mentally independent. What was born inside is a person who won't ask for help and won't reveal their needs. That's sad. That's really hard. Anxiety inducing. How great can you really be if you never ask for help? When you're sitting in a round room with no windows, talking to yourself, only learning what you're capable of learning on your own, how great can you really be? We need mentors. You can't really accomplish what you came here to do if you're going to be your only teacher. To heal, you need to learn the art of discernment. And if you are a developed, healthy 6th house Pluto, you probably are already doing this and figure out who to trust and who not to trust, and who you can genuinely learn your craft from, who has good intentions for you to learn from, and who won't misuse their information or their power to hold you down in a subservient position, right? Can you become willing again to trust others who may actually know more than you? And you know what? If you're sitting here listening to me, you're already doing it because you're wanting to learn something new. So I'm kind of proud of you. So I want to know if you're a 6th house Pluto. And if you can be empowered to open up your mind again to others, to learn something new. That is the remedy here. When these souls heal themselves, their work becomes deeply meaningful, so much so that they don't even see their work as a burden or a self-sacrifice, if you will, or a drudgery or monotony. And if you have this placement and you hate your work or you hate your job and you are completely uninspired with your life and you are a slave to it, know that that is your Pluto asking you to transform it. Yeah, you are not meant to be a slave. You are not meant to find mentors that abuse you and hold you down, make you drink their Kool-Aid. But you are here to find mentors that can empower you to get out of the rat race and into deeply meaningful work and develop your craft that you love. And yes, that helps benefit not only you, but the world. You're here to break free from that trap in which you were the subordinate slave, working your butt off, giving to others constantly, sacrificing your life, your energy, your time, your love, and finding gurus and mentors that made you believe that this is the way your life needs to be. It needs to look like this. It's just not true. The evolutionary path or remedy here consists of moving to the 12th house, which is the polarity point of the 6th house, and to understand from the cosmic bigger picture. Perfection is actually, it costs you life. It is the death of life. You need those imperfections to learn and to grow and to push yourself, to challenge yourself. Life is consistently not perfect, and chasing perfection, chasing constant improvement and believing that you have to improve will be the death of you. So I just don't want you to stay on that pathway of believing whoever told you that you're not good enough, because you in fact are. Pluto in the 7th house. My big question here with this placement is, who did you once trust? And then they abandoned you. Who was that? These are the souls that have emerged from lifetimes and lifetimes of being other-oriented. They also grew up focused on the needs and the wishes of others that they lived with. And while a lot of people think Libra is so balanced, it's actually ironic because they're here learning how to become balanced, and most of them are not. You're going to see oftentimes with Pluto here in the 7th house that these people go to extremes in relationship. So tell me if you can relate to this. This placement puts obsessions right at the heart of other people and relationships. While they need to be in relationship in order to grow their soul, they can also find themselves over isolating at times and then going into extreme dependency of others at other times. There is an enormous opportunity for codependency with this placement. People who have Pluto in the 7th, they can get addicted to the opinions that others have about them. This is Libra's house, not Taurus's house. Taurus Venus, I'll say, is the feminine Venus, and it introverts. But this is the masculine Venus expression. It's the yang side. So it goes outward, and it's far more social than Taurus. And it can even overvalue the social experience, never wanting to be home, never wanting to be alone. But again, because there's Pluto here, it will go to extremes. So it's either extremely alone and alienated, or it's extremely social. And if you're healthy, you probably have it in a good balance. So it can overattach and be dependent on their partnerships and relationships, or it can completely have given up on relationships and just go into self-isolation. I will say, though, that these people have an amazing capacity to connect with others in a Plutonian way. And these people are usually very deep and very intuitive and deeply feeling and intense, and they can talk about things that most other people won't. And when you love full out, and you are extreme in your love expression. There can be a very deep ability to connect with other people. And these people can attach so deeply that they may even suffer from losing their own identity by adopting the identity of the other person or the relationship that they're in. They may give up their own pleasures just to do your pleasures and your pursuits, whatever that may be. Always wanting to do what the other person likes, not even knowing their own preferences, not even knowing what they like or what they don't like, because they're so focused on what you like and what you don't like. Also, they may have attached to you or to somebody else that was important to them at such a young age that they have no idea what their own interests, what their own gifts or skills or hobbies even are. Is that you? Did you just struggle even knowing what the heck you were even good at? Leave me a comment and let me know. By the way, you guys, if you don't know your placements and if you're just starting, I cannot recommend enough getting my gorgeous natal chart. And you could just get my starter package, because you would get your gorgeous natal chart and you would get your deep dive report, and it would tell you about all your placements, including this Pluto placement and your Pluto aspects. And it is just so good. It is so yummy. It is so delicious. I sell them on my shop, which you can just click the shop tab on my website. Just check out the notes below. You could get your starter package. It's really good. And if you've been doing astrology for a little while, you should get my Advanced Astro Gold Package. It is so good. It shows you all your progressions. And what I love about it is it shows you your house rulers. And it's so important to know your rulers. Okay, let me just tell you, Pluto in the 7th house, these people really probably have a very big fear of being alone or of never finding love. They can be very fatalistic about love because deep down inside, they feel like that fairy tale is never going to happen for them. It will never be. There can be a real pessimism. And like I said, if they go that deeply, then sometimes they just cut themselves off from the dream altogether and they just isolate. So another expression of this placement is the over-idealization of what a relationship should look like, right? The fairy tale. These people are in search of a perfect partner, the perfect person. So check out your Venus aspect to Pluto in the 7th house. What is Venus doing in your chart? And if it's in negative aspect or crisis to Pluto, you probably really struggle. You probably really feel quite pessimistic or alienated from others. If it's in positive aspect, you probably have an easier option to heal these wounds. But if you have Pluto in the 7th, you probably are in search of perfection. And you can actually, not like Virgo, but I mean the perfect partner, the perfect love, the ideal relationship. And you can actually create in your mind what the ideal mate looks like. And then you project that idealization onto your partner and you start sculpting them into that very ideal. However, when you do that, you're making or creating the perfect person, the perfect relationship, but you're also going to get deep resentment from them, inauthenticity from them. So you can control people by getting people to do what you want them to do. You can use your charm and your manipulation to make that happen usually. This is a very interesting placement because there's a lot of control through charm and manipulation. Don't be mad at me. Don't hate me. Just be honest with me. Leave me a comment if you can relate to this. So you can be the one who is being controlling. You can also attract a partner dynamic where you control each other. You can also be kind of controlling to your own self in a way where you force your own self to do things that you don't really want to do in the name of the relationship. And you can also be the person who is controlled. When I say that you can be controlling to your own self, you might stay in an abusive relationship. You might have sex with somebody who you don't really want to even be with, but you feel obligated to do that. You might have an affair with somebody who it just simply can't work out with, and you know it. You can put yourself in those precarious situations pretty easily with this placement. Have you done that before? There are deep insecurities that need to be worked out with Pluto here. Wherever Pluto is, that's where you have a deep obsessive insecurity, but this is about your relationship. So there's deep insecurities and security issues with your relationships. So this stems from unresolved childhood issues around not feeling safe or secure in your relationships. So who from 0 to 14 were you supposed to feel safe with and you didn't, and they left you? There's probably huge abandonment issues with that person. This placement definitely tells us that you are here to work off, work out, work with your relationship karma. And this is from prior lifetimes or this lifetime too. These people, as I mentioned, have abandonment issues where they have been left in a way that was not very loving or kind. Somebody left you that made you feel utterly hurt and even abandoned. And this can happen through extreme circumstances like death or divorce or murder, or it is Pluto, or overdose, or somebody just leaving, or somebody getting too ill to be able to pay attention to you. It can happen in ways that are metaphorical or symbolic, a catastrophic accident of some sort where the person didn't mean to abandon you. Something terrible happened and it took them away from you. Maybe there's a parent in jail with this aspect. Can you relate to this? I want to know in your childhood if you experienced abandonment in some way, shape, or form. Did you experience being left? Because that stuck with you. And because of these abandonment issues, you can hold on to partners that are emotionally unavailable, or you can stay inside of partnerships that are no longer good for you, that you should leave, but you don't leave. Or you could not leave somebody maybe who abuses you. Ironically, you could attract unavailable partners working desperately to get their love, to get them to love you. So you can prove to yourself that you really are lovable, that you are worth not leaving. If you can get the unavailable partner to love you, well, then it vindicates you from the original wounding of the original person who left you. And then you get to prove to yourself, because you got this unavailable person, maybe the married partner, to divorce their partner and marry you. Well, it vindicates you. So your psychological wound thinks it vindicates you from the original wound. It heals the original wound, but it actually doesn't. Your mind just thinks that it does, and it doesn't. And you'll come to learn that getting the unavailable person to love you usually ends up in a dead end. The unavailable person usually never comes around and loves you. And so you repeat the wound over and over and over again. This placement has a tendency to choose broken, wounded, or unavailable or weak partners because there's a psychological fear that you'll be left anyway. You'll end up choosing on a subconscious level a person that will end up doing just that. We heal this Pluto placement by doing our first house really, really well, where we grow our individual preferences and we develop our courage to fulfill our needs without the excessive need to work for the approval and likes of others, right? When you do the first house well, you don't sacrifice your own soul's growth. Instead, when you're in relationship, you stand side by side, holding hands, supporting each other's individual dreams. Where are you on your Pluto wound journey? Have you healed your Pluto? I don't know if we ever can really heal our Pluto because even my Pluto, I feel like my Pluto is pretty well managed, but trust me, it can be triggered. Okay, let's talk about Pluto in the 8th house. This is my big question for you. Who stole your innocence? Who was that? Now, this might be the darkest Pluto placement that there is. And so I'm going to end this video with this house, but I want you to talk to me if you have a Pluto in the 8th house. Now, like the 4th house, this one is really hard to talk about and it's very, very painful. So if you have this placement, you are a big Plutonian person. You are a Pluto person. Pluto loves being in this house because this is Pluto's home. You are probably the natural psychologist or psychiatrist, and you are probably very, very deep, and you are probably very, very intense. If you do have this placement, tell me what sign you have it in. I also want to know if you can relate to this. So you, more than most people, are comfortable with the uncomfortable subjects in life. You came into this lifetime, or you developed it in your early childhood, to talk about all of the gory parts of life. You probably were exposed to in some way, talking about death, murder, suicide, crime, sex, violence, illness, addiction, anything that is uncomfortable. Because of that, many people probably feel comfortable confiding in you, like a psychologist or a therapist, because you're going to be able to go into the depths with them and help them sort out the mysterious gray matter inside of their problems. Usually with Pluto here, we see life in its complexity, in its irony, in its contradictory nature, in the mystique and the mysteriousness of the problems and the solutions. We don't just see things kind of like a torus, black and white, problem solution. No, we see the complexity. And you're probably not going to have a checklist of what's right and what's wrong, but instead you just live inside of being okay with the mysteriousness of life and the unknown parts of life. You'll have a fascination with the darker side of life with this placement, and you'll see that this is both your gift and this is also your wound. I'll share with you. It's your gift because it makes you so insightful, so penetrating, and just so perceptive. It's your wound because you're able to see the dark, the gory, even the disgusting parts of life. And perhaps you are the only one from your family in your childhood that could see the ugly truths. And you can easily shine the light on those ugly, gory truths. And the others just can't go there. They can't see it. They don't want to see it. They bury their head in the sand. And if they are incapable of seeing the ugly truths about themselves, about your family, about life, how can you trust these people to take care of you when you're a child, when you have the perception to see the truth and yet they don't? So what secrets did you see and did you know about that your mother or your father or your sisters or whatever were not willing to look at, were not willing to admit, were not willing to acknowledge or even discuss or talk about? If you have these big burning questions in life about these taboo subjects and nobody to talk to, how safe are you really going to feel? Let's go into this. Stephen Forrest, my mentor, who I love and adore, talks about this as losing your innocence for life early on. And he also says, if you ever even had it. Some of these people were just born without an innocence. Losing your innocence was not necessarily your fault. It was not your fault, I should say, but instead it was the condition of your environment. So I want to say it's the part of you that learned very early in life not to trust. So who did you feel from ages 0 to 14 that you were supposed to trust, but you did not? Why did you have to become weary of that person? You didn't want to not trust them and be wary of others. That was born out of a reason. You don't have to disclose, but who was that person? What was that reason? What happened? You learn to not leap and then look, but to go forward with great skepticism and caution. You learn that you needed to be very, very careful growing up. Why? What happened? And this carefulness can cause a deep paralysis inside of you, literally becoming frozen in great paranoia and fear. When this methodology really runs your life, it can also really ruin it because you can become so paranoid and so obsessive about others trying to get you that you become guarded and locked into yourself. And you can then just have a chronic and a compulsive anxiety and worry. Is that you? You can end up feeling like you trust no one, and you can live in total isolation because the one person that you do in fact trust is yourself. There's a deep sexual component to this placement too, as this is the house of death and sex and taxes and other people's investment in you. There's a deep desire usually to have a deep sexual intimacy. And there's also a fear of this very thing too. Let's just say there's a sexual magnetism or a magnetic desire to be with another person. And I also absolutely loved what Stephen said about this placement and sex. So I'm going to paraphrase it. He said, you might be so highly capable of understanding the psychology of others, even the relationships of others, but then also simultaneously and ironically incapable of understanding your own. It's baffling, right? Like the psychologist that can do everybody else's problems, but not their own. And you might constantly choose safe partners that are not as smart or wise as you are, not as perceptive or as aware as you are, not as emotionally intelligent as you are, or partners that don't have enough passion or intensity to match you, or those who are more wounded than you, so you can hold the power, have the upper hand, and ultimately be in control. And we all know how this is going to go, right? It's going to go into the sort of hellish frustrations that this kind of power struggle, power play can have on a relationship. You know, this is how you actually sabotage your relationships. You crave this intimacy, but you have a very hard time trusting others. So how does that work? You want this sexual intimacy more than anything, but you trust no one. I mean, how do you live like this? This is like, right? It's so twisted. And it is very, very hard for you to trust love, probably because someone who you once loved, you learned you could not trust. Who is that person? Do you relate? It's the perpetuating karmic wound that is begging to be healed. With this placement, you have a desire to put up a wall around your heart, even your soul, and to not let others in to that vulnerable place in you. And this is true for a lot of Scorpios as well. But this is really big time if you have Pluto in the 8th. You don't want to show others the vulnerable parts of you. I have always believed, I have learned through my work, that your willingness, to the degree that you're willing to be vulnerable, is to the same degree that you can have intimacy. So if you're willing to be vulnerable this much, you'll have that much intimacy. Intimacy is the vulnerable work of love. And to love means to take a risk. And that, my friend, is very, very scary for you. The healing remedy for this karmic wound is to learn to trust again. First, in order to do that, you have to open up your heart and even your soul. You need to take the risk and allow yourself to be seen, to be felt, and to be loved. And then, my sweet friend, you need to reciprocate that very love. It's scary work, I know. You need to be discerning to find that person out there who understands how sacred this intimacy work is, and then open up your soul to them and share with them and see them in their wounds and in their virtues. And then most importantly, allow them to see you. I know you're going, no. This is a soul revealing Pluto placement, and it is extremely painful but necessary for the Pluto in the 8th house person to do. I want to point out one more thing. This is a trauma bonding house. You can do this work with platonic relationships, but since it's the house of sex, we could just use the word house of intimacy. This kind of healing, opening up your heart, opening up your soul to another, often comes through intimate moments in life. And you may find that loss or death or tragedy forces you, is the catalyst to open up your heart, open up to another person who gets you. Once a person with this placement has trusted another and allowed their soul to be seen, they have a very, 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 very hard time letting them go. They feel so intensely, deeply bonded to them, and they can become so attached, merged together, sewn together to them, that this person is now everything to them because they told them their secrets. And secrets are the sacred word of Pluto. And so they get addicted to that deep, intense, powerful feeling in that exchange of intimacy. And they don't want to go out there and do that all over again. And they can't find that easily in anyone. And so there's a real potential for very deep hurts and wounds in personal relationships with this placement. So these people have got to choose so wisely before they let anybody in. It's absolutely critical. In previous lifetimes, these people had unresolved trust issues within their relationships. They had painful issues with people who detached from them or who they had to detach from themselves. And so this can, in their lifetime, create negative feelings inside their current relationships. And there can be a lot of resentment if the person detaches from them after the Pluto person has revealed themselves to that other person. So if that other person ups and leaves or is frivolous with the Pluto person's secrets or intimacy, and they don't treat it as sacred, these people get devastated. They can have absolutely irrational outbursts, and they can have even a preoccupation with ending their own life. They can have a moodiness, a depression, and even experience violent rage and abuse. Mark Jones, another astrologer that I just absolutely love and adore out of London, he talks about retaliatory with this placement, where the person is so obsessive about their fears inside the relationship, their fears of not being able to trust, that their fears get so big it overrides the survival instinct, and they feel something like Mark says, if you won't meet my needs, well then neither will I. I won't meet my needs either. And so they end themselves. You know, we need to come to value our inner self and do our second house work to build self-worth and self-esteem and to learn to trust again. Now, the different aspects to this Pluto, especially from Mars, is really important. So if you have a negative Mars-Pluto aspect, this really intensifies the pain. So I want to know, where is Mars in your chart, and is it in negative or positive aspect to Pluto? I hope you guys got something wonderful out of these Pluto placements, houses 5 through 8. Next week, I will be doing 9 through 12. And I want to know where your Pluto placement is. How old are you? And I hope so much that you're watching my entire Pluto playlist and that you're learning about the other people in your life and what their deep psychological wounds are, because it will help you understand them more compassionately. I also want to ask you, if each and every one of you has a friend subscribed to my channel, we will get to 100,000 subscribers, and that is my goal by the end of the year. So please share my content. If you wouldn't mind, subscribe and hit the little bell, because I do spontaneous lives. And if you want to join my channel, you get all my behind the scenes videos, and I do mini readings for my members. I pick your name randomly. If I haven't picked you yet, I'm sorry. Hopefully I will. Hopefully I will. But thank you to all my super supporters and my superstar super supporters. And I hope you're coming to my next Astro party. I cannot wait, from my home here in Seattle to wherever you are at in the world. I wish you the very, very best. Take good care.